Good evening, everyone. I hereby call this meeting to order. It is 6 p.m. Item number 2 on the agenda is roll call. If I could go ahead and start with my board member starting from my right.
Jessica Ochoa, present.
Carlos Margo, present.
Anita Chavez, present.
Alisa Peña, present.
Celso Gomez Jr., present.
Let the record show that Dr. Rosalba Hernandez is not here yet for roll call. Hopefully we can expect her to be here in a bit. Next item on the agenda would be agenda item number 3, which is the Pledge of Allegiance. I ask that everyone please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may sit. So we all know that this is a very important day, 9/11, and there is something that I'd like to read on behalf of the La Jolla School Board. Members of the board, staff, and community, today as we gather here on this September 11th, we pause to recognize the Patriots' Day, a day of reflection, remembrance, and gratitude. It has been 23 years since that tragic day in 2001, a day that will forever change our nation. We honor the countless lives lost and the heroes who risked everything to save others. In particular, we extend our deepest appreciation to our first responders, whose courage and dedication continue to keep us safe. We ask that any first responders in the audience tonight please stand and be recognized. So we do have our officers standing. Thank you, Chief, to you and your team, and those that serve as nurses aides, or any of the other staff that we have. Please know that our prayers are with you, and we are very grateful to have all of you. We will never forget the sacrifices made, and we will always hold in our hearts the resilience and strength of our nation. Thank you for your service, and thank you all for remembering this day with us today. So thank you all. Let the record show that Dr. Rosalba Hernandez has joined us, 6:02. Ladies and gentlemen, we have everyone in attendance, and again, as stated earlier, we do have quorum. Okay. Next item on the agenda, and thank you for allowing me to state the acknowledgement of this special day, the Patriots' Day. Next item on the agenda, as I reference, is public comment. I am going to ask our secretary, Alisa Peña, if she calls those to the podium, if you could again recognize yourself for the record. And I do have my vice president who will inform you after your 3 minutes are up. So with that said, we can have our first public comment.
We only have one tonight, and we'll have Ms. Pamela Flores, if you want to make your way to the podium, please.
Start?
Yes, Ms. Torres, you may begin.
Flores.
Flores, I'm sorry, ma'am.
Good evening, members of the board and Dr. Sorensen. My name is Pamela Flores. I am a proud product of La Jolla ISD. On August the 14th, I stood before you on behalf of the La Jolla ISD coaches and sponsors to express our concerns regarding planned changes to the distribution of stipends. Historically, these stipends were paid monthly, but the new plan required payment after services were rendered. This shift placed an additional financial burden on our coaches and sponsors, who had already faced the loss of their monthly income due to the removal of extra days, a battle we could no longer fight. That day, I asked you, Dr. Sorensen, to listen to the voices of your hardworking coaches and sponsors and do what was right. We wondered if our 3 minutes here would make a difference. I stand here today, 4 weeks later, to say thank you. It is clear that you have heard the feedback of your stakeholders and you have taken immediate, meaningful action to resolve the issue. We spoke, you listened, and most importantly, you made things right. For that, we're deeply grateful. We thank you, Dr. Sorensen, your cabinet, and the members of the school board for your thoughtful response. We recognize that there will be times when we will not agree with all decisions made, and that is a natural part of our collaborative environment. However, the ultimate goal remains clear: to restore trust and pride in La Joya ISD and ensure that all decisions prioritize the best interests of our students. As a member of this community, I can honestly say this decision marks a turning point for many of us who came together feeling disheartened and desperate, feelings that we did not wish to associate with our district. Your responsiveness has helped build a bridge, one that we hope our community will recognize as a path forward, rooted in approachability and integrity. We look forward to maintaining an open line of communication with everyone involved, staff members, community members, and all stakeholders who take great pride in our district. Thank you again for listening, and most importantly, for acting in the best interests of the coaches of our district. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Flores. Thank you. Secretary Peña, do we have any other folks providing comments tonight?
That is it for tonight.
Thank you very much. We may proceed with superintendent's updates and announcements. Agenda item number 5, checking the code, or what is it, cracking the code, TEA, and A through F accountability. The presenters for this particular agenda item is Dr. Derek Little, Chief of Academics and School Leadership, Melinda Flores, our Executive Director of Assessment. I know I see he's making her way. And of course, Mr. Duque, who's joined us today, Director of Assessment and Accountability. Ladies and gentlemen, go ahead, Dr. Little. I can always tell when it's Wednesday by Bow Tie Wednesday, so I love the way it looks. So thank you for that. Nice to see you all again.
Nice to see you. Yes, we're back for round 2 tonight. So good evening, board, superintendent, and community. We do want to provide an overview of how the accountability system works. We talked a lot last time on what our data looked like from last year, what we could celebrate, what we were using to drive improvement, and the inputs that we are putting into our system this year to help lead that improvement. What we want to do tonight is sort of peel the curtain back a little bit to talk about how the accountability itself is structured and how the data we looked at 2 weeks ago actually feeds into our overall ratings. To start with, it's helpful to step back and sort of ask ourselves the question, what is the accountability system itself trying to represent, and what is it solving for? And at the core, school ratings, district ratings, and the accountability system is really trying to indicate how well we are doing against the things that matter most for our students right now and into the future. And so the Texas accountability system is really looking at 3 things. Are we improving student performance? So from our conversation last time, are we getting more students to that on-grade level meets or masters achievement? We're also looking at how we're thinking about disparities across student groups and if we're eliminating those achievement and opportunity gaps. Because to our vision on the floor in front of me, like, we think that educational excellence is the right of every student. And so that can't just be for some La Joya students, that has to be for all La Joya students. And then the third thing, which really starts to think about life after La Joya, is have we adequately prepared students once they cross the graduation stage for what comes next, thinking about college, career, or the military. So as we start to dig into the somewhat details, we're going to try not to put too many of them into tonight's discussion, but enough to help this make sense. These are the 3 things that are really important in accountability, and from our discussions, these are the 3 things that are really important to us as a district as well, and what we want to see in terms of student outcomes. Want to revisit something that we talked about at the last meeting, and this was a description of the achievement levels in STAR. So we spent some time sort of talking about this distinction from does not meet grades level all the way up to masters, but we want to layer on 2 additional pieces of information for our conversation tonight. The first builds on what we said last time, that even when we get students to the on-grade level achievement, meets grade level, we know that they may still need intervention support to be successful in what comes next. We actually are adding a bit of a statistic to that for you tonight to say, if a student is at the meets grade level, they have a 60% chance of succeeding in the next grade or college after that without remediation. But that still means there's a 40% chance that they need that intervention. So even though that's our aspiration, what we are working for to achieve for our students, there's still work to do and support to be provided, even at that level. The second thing we want to call out here, and this will become more important when Mr. Duque sort of starts walking us through the mechanics of the accountability system itself, is how we earn points or how students contribute points to the accountability system at each of these levels. It's important to note that a student that is at this does not meet level isn't contributing any points to the accountability rating. So like they are just not part of how we are getting credit for the hard work that our teachers and leaders are doing in the classroom every day. So at a bare minimum, we obviously don't want any students at that point for the benefit of the individual student, but also because that's not what we want to see as a campus or as a system. As we get to approaches up to meets, we start to earn those points. And so a student at the master's level, the highest level of achievement, actually has 3 points in the accountability system. So they got to count at the approaches level, the meets level, and the master's level. So these are additive. So there's real benefits, again, to the individual student as we move along, but there's also benefits to us as a system to better show what we are contributing to that student's journey based on these achievement levels. The other sort of framing piece that we wanted to clarify today is what goes in from a big picture standpoint into these ratings. And we'll walk through this slide from top to bottom. So as we think about ratings for elementary schools, it is really helpful and important to keep in mind that the entire determinant of that rating is STAR results. It is even more helpful to keep in mind that those results are coming from a portion of the campus. Only 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders at an elementary school are taking STAR. We're doing a ton of work in the pre-K2 space to make sure we've got a great early learning start, and that pays off by the time it gets to STAR. That also pays off, as we've talked a lot about in the coming weeks, for the rest of their life. But the letter grade, so to speak, here really is based on the 7 assessments that exist at the 3-5 level. So that's 2 each in reading and math, and then the 1 in 5th grade in science. Middle schools is similar. That's also 100% from the STAR results. Now, what's different there is obviously every grade level in a middle school is participating. 6th, 7th, and 8th graders are taking the STAR exam. As we pointed out last time, it gets a little bit nuanced in math at the middle school level because we may have some 8th graders taking Algebra 1, so there's a few other factors there, but that's still all driven by those assessment results. High schools, though, are looked at differently. And there's a bigger portfolio here of what goes into the results. 40% is still STAR. Those are the 4 EOC exams that we called out last time and shared data on. Another 40% actually comes from that, did we prepare students for what comes after La Jolla through college, career, and military readiness ratings? And then 20% is coming through graduation. We're not going to sort of peel back the onion on how CCMR and graduation rates at the granular level impact accountability tonight. There's a lot of nuance and technicalities there, but we did want everybody to know at least how they contribute to the overall result. And after Mr. Duque walks through the accountability system itself, we're going to come back and show you how these different levels, elementary, middle, and high, actually contribute to the overall district rating as well. So with that, Mr. Duque is going to have the fun part tonight where he gets to actually explain how we in Texas run our accountability system.
Thank you, Dr. Little. Good evening. As we begin to frame the discussion of how accountability is calculated, we want to consider the 3 components of the accountability system. We call them the 3 pillars of the accountability system. We look at student achievement, student progress, and closing the gaps. Each of them represents achievement, progress, and equity respectfully, right? Those 3 components are aggregated to create what we call an overall rating. That overall rating is then tied to an A through F system, a simple system that everybody in the community is able to understand. An A-rated campus is a good campus in the community's eyes. An F-rated campus is not a good campus in the community's eyes. And so as we begin to discuss the different components of each part of the system, we're hoping that there's a better understanding of how kids are provided instruction in the classroom and how that turns into an A through F rating for campuses. We're going to begin with the student achievement domain. The student achievement domain I like to refer to as exactly what's going on in the classroom, what happens in the classroom, the level of instruction, the level of rigor in the classroom. As we begin to look at the student achievement domain, 1 point is awarded for each performance level that a student achieves within their STAR assessment. Now, it's important to understand that some students will take 2 STAR assessments, some will take 3 in elementary, some will take 4 in middle school, and some will take as many as 5 in high school. It just depends at what level they are, or in high school if they are what we call a retester because they failed to meet at least approaches performance level in the first administration. As we begin to calculate domain 1, it's important to understand that the domain itself is broken up into 3 equal parts, which is why you have that picture representation of the weights of the STAR performance levels. So a student that achieves approaches grade level will count once. A student that is able to meets grade level will count at approaches and meets. And if the student achieves master's performance level, they'll count 3 times, once it approaches, once it meets, once it masters. So every student at La Jolla ISD has the potential to count 3 times as we generate this rating for our district under the student achievement domain. Now for high schools, like Dr. Little said earlier, we do include a CCMR component and we do include a graduation component. But for middle schools and for elementary, STAR is the only metric that is used for calculating that A through F rating. We're going to move on to our student progress pillar. Our student progress pillar takes 2 things into account. It's going to take academic growth and relative performance. Academic growth is how our students are demonstrating a years of academic growth from year to year. This is how we track our students from year to year and how we can see if they're making progress in attaining that on-grade level instruction that we're provided. Relative performance is how the state compares us to like-type school districts that share same demographic percentages. As we look at growth, what you have in front of you is the actual TEA data table that helps our campuses and our districts calculate growth by student. What we've done for the purposes of this presentation is we have identified a student, which is on your y-axis, your top to bottom axis, which represents prior year performance. The top row, the green row, is our current year target. So we have a student that in 2023 performed at a low does not meet grade level in math. For that student to help the district and to help the campus improve their rating, that student must have a target and a goal set for them. For this student, we're setting a goal of low approaches grade level. This means that this student, if they were able to achieve that low approaches grade level performance, would not only have grown 1 year's worth of performance, but they would have grown more than 1 year's worth of performance, because in order to grow 1 year's of performance, you have to go from the same performance level indicator in the previous year to the same performance level indicator in the current year. This child superseded that and went and achieved a low approaches grade level. So they grew more than 1 year. We have plenty of cases like this in the district where we have students that are struggling in 3rd grade, say math or reading, and in 4th grade, we provide enough intervention that they're able to really supersede that performance in the current year. So every student in La Jolla ISD who fails to meet at least approaches grade level will have a target set for them. Along with all students that did achieve approaches, meets, and masters, they will all have targets for the upcoming school year. Relative performance is how the agency compares La Jolla ISD to like-type school districts. Large school districts is what we are classified as. And so relative performance provides an avenue for the agency to compare our domain 1 performance to other districts that are like-type districts. So in this case, because of our demographics, the better we perform in domain 1, we're always going to perform better in domain 2B, relative performance. So that's always going to be a target for La Jolla ISD, is to always improve what's happening in the classroom that directly impacts domain 1, so that our domain 2B can always be better. And that's going to be the case for about 90% of our campuses across the district. The last pillar of accountability, and I think this is one of the most difficult pillars to address as a campus principal, as a teacher, as a student, is the equity pillar. It's closing the gaps, and this is where they identify specific student groups. Every district is going to be rated on the all-student group and how they perform. The really neat thing about Domain 3 is that they only look at meets performance, which is on grade level performance. If you all recall our presentation from a few weeks ago, we focused strictly on grade level performance. That is because we as a district want to ensure that our campuses, our classrooms, our students are setting goals for on grade level performance, because again, all three components are tied to one another. How you perform in Domain 1 will impact how Domain 3 is calculated. Therefore, if you achieve a really strong performance in Domain 1, you can expect a really, really strong performance in Domain 3. But that's only going to happen if we actually target the meets performance grade level. That's our closing the gaps. What I'd like to point out to you all as a board is that every district and every campus in the state will generate what we call 4 student groups. The all-student group and the 2 highest, what they look at is the 2 lowest performance racial ethnic groups and the high focus group. For the purposes of this presentation, and if you look at your screen, we've only identified 3. That's because at La Jolla ISD, we serve predominantly a 99.9% Hispanic demographic. Therefore, we actually don't create that 4th racial ethnic group as a district. So as a district, we will only be evaluated on 3 groups. The other neat thing about the system for us is that the all-student group is directly proportional to the Hispanic group. So if our all-student group performs very, very well, so will our Hispanic group. Our high focus group is a way that the TEA organized demographics and special populations so that students would not impact you more than once. In the previous systems that existed, special ed student that was also a Hispanic, that was also an emergent bilingual, that was also an economically disadvantaged student, and an at-risk student would impact you across the board on these tables. Now, all of those demographics have been funneled into what they call the high focus group. And that high focus group will only impact one time. So a student can only impact the district one time. So if they perform very well, they will positively impact. If they don't perform very well, then they will negatively impact the campus and the district. Again, that's our call to action. If they are not performing well, what are we going to do to ensure that in this next school year, we do get them to on-grade level performance? The table in front of you also shows targets. There's 2 sets of targets. There's a black target with a green inlay. That is the current year target. So these are percentages of students that must perform on grade level at the meets level. The red circles with the blue inlay are the 2038 targets. These are the final targets as the TEA integrates the system across all districts and campuses around the state. So it's a 15-year plan to integrate this system. The board should note that regardless if a campus or a district attains all current year targets, we will only receive 75% of the points available to the district in Domain 3. In order to achieve 100% of the points, the campuses around the district must achieve the long-term targets, which are those targets from 2038, which are about, right now if we do the math, it's probably about good 14, 15 years away. So there is unique cases, there is occurrences that occur. In the interest of transparency, and because our community must know, is that we have verified that one of our campuses will be, if the ratings ever are released by the TEA, will be rated an F-rated campus. We have verified that rating as a district when we submitted our data to TEA. They verified that we do have a campus that did not achieve performance. In Domain 3, based off of this table, we want to show you that it is extremely important that we focus not only on how we are doing this year, but also on how we performed the previous year, because the previous year performance will impact current year performance. So as you can see, in RLA, which is the top portion of that table, we look at our RLA performance in 2023, and at this campus, we were at 37% meets in 2023. Current year, 2024, or previous year, last year, 2024, that campus had a 3-point slide almost across the board. If you look at the way that the table is laid out, we actually regressed. Because of that regression, and because we did not achieve the current year target, we earned 0 points for that particular grade level and for that particular subject, I'm sorry. If you look at math performance, which is at the bottom of the table, we had an even bigger slide. And so in math performance, we actually slid from 31% to 26% at the all-student group. So it's a 5-point slide. And again, that slide occurred across the table. But remember what I said, if you don't perform well at the all-student group, because of the way we're designed in this district, we're not going to perform across the table at all. So if the all-student group fails, so will the Hispanic group, and so will the high-focus group. And that's exactly what happened at this campus. So the implications of this is that we have a campus that has failed to perform. This is going to cause probably some parents to worry, and we'll probably have to have communication with those parents regarding this performance. But this is what happens when we fail to prepare kids to perform to on-grade level performance. As we move on, La Joya ISD is no longer rated as a really big district. We are now just a proportion of every campus's performance. As a district, there was very many different avenues that we could impact because we were rated as a whole district. When the TEA released this new system of accountability, they opted to proportionally weight every campus. So every campus's enrollment determines the proportional weighting of their impact on the district. I'll give you an example with the pie table that's there. In 2024, 47% of the weight of the final grade that we announced a couple weeks ago was provided to us by our elementaries. So 23 elementaries represent 47% of the final grade for the district. In middle school, 21%. So 8 schools represent 21% of the final grade. High school is a little bit more dynamic. It's a little bit interesting. We actually have 5 high schools, 3 of them that are comprehensive and 2 that are early colleges. Out of the 5 high schools, 3 comprehensive high schools actually represent about 28 to 29% of the final rating for the district. So how we perform across all grade levels and across all campus types is really important. And so what the TEA does is they take the final letter grade for each campus and they multiply it by their percent weight. If you look at the graphic on your left, you have a high school that is 50% weight and they earned a 75. That 75 is then multiplied in half because of the percent weight. And that's their percentage that they're going to contribute to the district's final letter grade. When you add all 4 campuses, the district is an 80. However, they do have a campus that is at a 75. They have 2 campuses that are B-rated campuses and 1 A-rated campus. And that's how the TEA has transformed the district rating from a very big high school to just a representation of each one of their campuses' performance. I believe after this slide, I'm going to let Ms. Melinda Flores take you through the decoding of what the grades mean.
Thank you, Mr. Duque. And so decoding those grades and what do those ratings mean? At this time, we don't have the ratings public, but we do have verified grades. But coming to the way it's set up, the system is typically set up just like a traditional grading policy in a classroom. And so the function is so that people understand our accountability system. So A through F, once the methodologies are calculated and the scores are averaged out, that anybody scoring within that 90 to 100 gets that A. And that is outstanding achievement. So that is demonstrating that exceptional performance taking place at that campus or the district level. When the methodology calculations are between that 80 or 89, then you receive that B. And that is an above average performance. So you're getting solid student performance coming from B ratings because they're meeting and or exceeding most of those state targets. When you get to 70 through 79 calculations, you're receiving that C performance, which is satisfactory performance, and you're meeting minimum state requirements, but there are notable areas of improvement that need to be looked at. When you're getting down to that D, 60 to 69%, you are now below average. You're struggling to meet those state standards, and you have that significant deficiency in one or possibly in all three domains. A D rating signals that you've got substantial improvement and that educational environment is in need of improvement. And one other thing to note is anytime a campus is at a 60 through 69, this keeps the district from that A rating, and that's by rule. Mr. Duque just took you through the information and the methodologies and the ratings that we had for our F campus. Obviously, that is below that 60. So significant improvement is needed anytime any campus or a district receives this rating. You're just failing to meet those basic state requirements in multiple domains. So again, that F is needing immediate and comprehensive intervention. And to address these shortcomings, campuses and districts are required to go into improved educational outcomes. And so when we wrap that up and put that together, one of the next steps we have is working with our Lone Star governance to get these goal settings. Because again, just like Dr. Little mentioned at the beginning, the state law comes in and tells us that the whole purpose of the A through F rating system is so that districts are continuously improving student performance and that we're making sure we're closing those achievement gaps. And as you noticed with Mr. Duque as part of the presentation, this looks at all students, no matter what their demographic is. You're not hiding students anymore, which is a great thing about the system, so that you're focused on improving all student outcomes. And with those outcomes are the steps that we're moving into, and we're eager to participate with Lone Star Governance, and we've started the work. And we're very eager to continue that work to improve those, the system for our student outcomes. And so what are the next steps that we have at La Joya ISD? And that is to make sure that we're being transparent, and we're going to be posting on our media website our district and our campus verified ratings. We will also be including last year's, the 23-24, and the 22-23, so that you could have a comparison and our community can also get that information. We're also going to be providing an explanation of what those ratings mean. We're going to be adding links to some helpful resources that are being provided to us from texasschools.gov. And our district just also finalized and placed parent curriculum resources on our district website, so that it's a community effort. A lot of the work being done by the district, by our campuses, down to the classroom letters, but bridging that partnership with our community and our parents, so that we're in this working on this together. And so that concludes our presentation for this evening, and we're going to go ahead and open it up for any questions.
Members of the board, do we have any questions for Ms. Flores?
Yes, I do. Mr. Alvarez, I have a question for either one in the group. I just was curious in Domain 2, relative performance. Would the website that you just referenced have access to, or give us access to the comparison group? The other large school districts to which we are compared?
That website will not. However, there is a website that does allow you to compare performance for La Joya ISD in comparison to the region and state based off of that one demographic, and it's through Cambium Assessment Inc. The Cambium Assessment Inc. website, they have a research portal that's available open to the public, where you can actually select the campuses and the schools or the districts that you would like to compare. Typically, as a district, we use the website to compare ourselves to like-sized districts within the region, but we also include the whole region as a whole, because we like to see how we compare in performance to the region and the state as well.
What's the site again? I'm sorry.
It's Cambium Assessment Inc., texasassessment.gov. And we'll add it to the website as a link, so we'll add a direct link to the portal on this website.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Great recommendation.
I do have a question. So when the TA ratings are made public and made available to the parents, let's assume that their student happens to be in an F campus and they decide that they want to move their student to a better rated campus, is there going to be information on that available for them?
Absolutely. So a couple of specific things about that campus. So we are going to be announcing really soon a community meeting at that school so we can talk about what this data means, what we're doing at that campus to provide support, and if parents are looking for other options, be available to support them through that.
Thank you.
Secretary Pena, that was a great question. That's a really good question. And so when would these meetings start, Dr. Little?
I expect we will have the first one in the next 2 weeks. We will also be posting the information that Ms. Flores just shared within the next 2 weeks as well.
Great. Do we have any further questions for Ms. Flores, Mr. Duque, or Dr. Little? You know, that was a really informative presentation. This is really good, and it's good to see. And I appreciate the fact that Mr. Duque referenced that the transparency is really important to the parents of those that have students here in our district. So we appreciate that. And we continue to look forward to your presentations because this is very informative. So thank you for that. Seeing that there's no further questions, thank you very much. Our next presenter is agenda item 5.2. Board policy updates, legal, local, and regulations, and this will be done by Ms. Jamie Miller. Ms. Miller?
Good evening, President Alvarez, members of the board, and Dr. Swanson. We are going to talk about board policies this evening. So what are board policies? There's really 3 buckets that we need to talk about. The first is the legal bucket. This compiles our federal laws, our state laws, and court decisions. It really provides a framework for the district to then go and make local policies. Legal policies are given to the district and they do not come to the board for approval. So what do we do? Once we have our legal policies, then we have local policies. And local policies are really the guidance that the district has to govern the day-to-day and long-term operations. It helps us to implement the laws, and local policy is always adopted by the board. So anytime a local policy is changed, even if we're changing one word in the policy, it does have to come before the board, and the board does have to adopt it for it to be put into practice. Then we have regulations. So regulations are really the how. So we have these local policies. How do we use the local policies? For example, if we have a policy on leaves, how do teachers ask for leave? That would be the regulation. Regulations are created by the district, but they are not adopted by the Board of Trustees. So in La Jolla ISD, we have missed some policy reviews. We have fallen behind and have not updated our local policies since 2021. So there are 4 updates that need to happen, and we do have a plan on how to get that done. So these delays were due to the previous administration and the Human Resources Department. Then the updates were not brought before the board and were not adopted by the board. The consequences of this is that we do lack alignment in the latest and legal guidelines. Also, we have had missed opportunities for improving the district's governance and our operations. So we do want to ensure that we're going to bring our local policies to you for approval. So we have had legal update 120, 121, 122, and 123. So those will be brought to the board, one tonight, which is 120, 121 will be on September 25th, 122 October 9th, and 123 October 23rd. So once those local policies are approved, we will disseminate them out and let all the departments know any changes that have been made. Then we will start looking at regulations. Right now, La Jolla ISD does not have any regulations. We have some procedures, but they are not regulations. And we need to see, does the procedure, is it based on policy? Does it need to be changed? And then we need to ensure that we do have regulations on some of our really heavy-hitting policies. Not every local policy has to have a regulation, but we do know that some regulations need to be created. And we will have a plan moving forward with that. So what are we going to do after these updates to local policy are done? So moving forward, we have established a routine of ongoing and annual policy maintenance. So anytime a court decision is made, TASB may update legal policy. They send it to the district with suggestions on our local policies. We will ensure that we're looking at those suggestions. If we need to make changes, those changes will be made, and then it will be brought to you because, again, all local policy is brought to the board to be adopted. We are also going to have TASB do an audit to look at all of our policies to see, are there any suggestions that they need to make to us to make changes? We're going to resolve internal inconsistencies that have developed over time, and we're going to ensure that we train our administrators and the board on policy issues. Does anyone have any questions?
Any of the board members have any questions?
Jamie, can you give us an example of how currently we don't have a regulation in one of our local policies and how we're looking to implement regulations?
So on leaves and absences, we do not have a regulation on that. There is a process. We have teachers who fill out a form, and there's different ways that it's approved, but it's not based on the policy. So we are looking at ensuring that teachers know what kind of leave do they have, whether it's state, local, but then we have FMLA. We have different types of leave that people may need, and they need to know how you access that leave, what you need to have in order to be approved for that leave. But that would be something, that would be a regulation that would be created because it's the how. How do our teachers have access to that local policy and the benefits of that local policy? Because we do need to remember that policy protects the district, but it also protects our staff, it protects our students and our community. So we really, want to have those regulations so they know the how of our local policies.
Thank you.
I have a question, Jamie.
Yes, ma'am.
You mentioned that we don't have a policy for leaves. Now that we're going to update policy 120 right now, and I think that includes leaves in it, how soon or what kind of timeline are you expecting to have something out for staff about a regulation for that sort of?
So we are starting that actually next week. It's going to be cross-departmental because we know we need many people involved in this. So starting next week, we're going to work on that regulation and ensure that even though it doesn't come to the board to be adopted, that you are aware of what we are putting into our regulations and then disseminate it to our principals, our staff, and let everyone know the communication that this is the process we have put in place on this local policy.
Thank you.
President Alvarez, can I please address that also? One of my charges as the superintendent with each of my cabinet members is that they're to have a couple really heavy hitter work streams and goals for the year. Policy alignment and updates is one of Ms. Miller's that she is charged with this year. And so to answer your question, Ms. Chavez, regulations is an ongoing work stream for her this year because going into school year 25-26, we know that we've got to get several regulations on the books, the ones that are really heavy hitting for us as a district. Another one that I know that we've talked about is an employee discipline code and how we really use progressive discipline. And discipline isn't necessarily the word that I want to use, but how do we get more progressive in terms of intervening in acts of misconduct with our employees, right? How it doesn't just go from, something happens to termination, right? What are all the things in between that could potentially be remediations and interventions and ways in which we work together so that we resolve conflicts? So those are things that we could put in regulations. We're going to seek input also on like what are these really heavy things that we want to resolve as a district. And so this is one of her work streams that's going to take the year. And not that leaves will take a year, but which ones are we going to focus on as a district so that going into 25, 26, we have a bucket of them that are finished so that as we get into next year, we've got some really good ones to roll out to our district next year.
Thank you, Dr. Sorensen. Jamie, I have a question for you. So once regulations that you and staff have discussed, how will you be informing our employees of regulations? Would that be in conversations with them, workshops? Because I can imagine how much work you must have right now, right? And so the regulations, like you said, we don't have any regulations, right? So it's going to be a task just disseminating that information to our employees. Am I correct?
Yes, so it will be communication with the leaders in the district and with employees in the district. Also, anytime there are regulations, they do go into our policy online handbook. So there's a tab for legal, there's a tab for local, and then we will add the tab for the regulation, where employees and the public can go in and see what our regulations are.
Okay. So you'll be keeping the public posted and updated.
It is online that
Great.
anyone can go in and look at our policy online, and they can go and look at our legal, our local, and our regulations.
Great.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Jamie.
And I just would add that we do have our two partners here with us, ATPE and AFT. And so I am certain that they will want to be with us at the table as we create these regulations. And so I look forward to partnering with both of you as we take this journey together.
Dr. Sorensen, you read my mind. I saw him in the audience, and that's the reason I said that. So I'm glad to see that they're here with us again today. Anybody else have any questions for Jamie? Jamie, again, great presentation to you and your staff. Thank you. Next agenda item is still 5.3, Lone Star Governance, the work ahead. Tonight we have the Lone Star Governance coach, Ms. Diana Barrera. Diana, welcome, and welcome to South Texas.
Good evening, President Alvarez, Dr. Sorensen, members of the board, and members of the community. I come to you as the La Jolla ISD Lone Star Governance coach, and I want to talk mostly to the community today to tell them about our process, what we're doing, and why we're doing it. So student outcomes don't change until adult behaviors change. Student outcomes do not change until adult behaviors change. That is the root, that is the anchor for Lone Star Governance. So Lone Star Governance, what is it? What's the work that we're going to do? I'm going to take the long way to get to that answer tonight because I want to give some reference to the community about what we've done in the past, what are our beliefs, and where we're going. So why do school systems exist? Board, I'm going to ask you. Remember we talked about this. What's the purpose of school systems?
To improve outcomes.
To improve student outcomes. That's it. We're not here to just provide jobs for the community. We're not here to make money, right? We are here to educate students and to improve student outcomes so that they'll have better choices and have a better future. So that's what our focus is going to be on. So what is the connection between student outcomes and Lone Star Governance? Lone Star Governance is a continuous improvement model for teams, for governing teams just like you right here. And the governing team here is made up of the 7 board of managers and the superintendent. And this group has chosen, with many other districts in Texas, to focus intensely and unapologetically on only one primary objective, improving student outcomes. That means we're focusing on what's happening with the kids. How is this impacting the kids? So it's a shift. It's a shift in our meetings. It's a shift in how the district operates. Many times school systems get stuck in adult problems, talking about things that are happening to the adults and with the adults. That's the work. We have to do that, right? We've got to solve problems. But at the end of the day, the focus has to be, how does this connect to students? So it takes a village to do the work that's needed to improve student outcomes. It's not just one person doing it. It's certainly not just the board. It takes bus drivers, cafeteria staff, assistants, teachers, administrators, technology staff, nursing staff, administrators, coaches, special staff, maintenance workers, bus drivers, cafeteria staff, everybody. It happens when everybody comes together and to do the work that they're supposed to be doing. But there is one person who's responsible for making sure that everyone in this village is working on the right work, and that's the superintendent. She works with the help of her administrative team to run the operation of the district. That is her responsibility. It is not the responsibility of board members to call and give suggestions about, ways that they think the district should be operated. And my job as a coach is to keep those conversations in line, to make sure board is staying on the board side so that the superintendent can do her work. And that's one of the roles of the coach. So the community charges the school board with oversight of the superintendent to ensure the improvement of student outcomes. So I'm going to ask, who's responsible for making the plans, monitoring all the plans, developing these systems, developing all these policies, right, to achieve the appropriate, clearly defined, and desired results? Who's responsible for doing that? For district operations? Board, there's one person responsible for implementing and doing all of these things. I know you're all looking at it. Yes, it's a superintendent. It's a lot. You have charged this individual with doing the hard work, right? And you're going to hold her responsible and accountable. So she needs to be clear on what those things are going to be that she's going to be held accountable to and for. But I will tell you that most of the complaints that board members get are adult-focused. Now we're starting to hear about instruction. We're starting to hear about programs. It makes me happy, not that there's complaints, but I'm happy that parents are asking those questions and wanting more information. That's exactly where all of us should be focused. So the role of the board is to intensely focus on student outcomes. You're going to keep hearing this ad nauseum, but it does take all of us reminding each other about this. And my job is to support the board by helping them build up their knowledge, their skills, and their mindset to make sure that they operate not just as a board, we don't just want a good board, we want an effective board, an effective governance team. And so to have an effective governance team, it takes a lot of work on their part, lots of training. And my job as a coach to support them. We talk about, okay, what happened at this meeting, how are things going? And we're also talking about how problems are solved within the board and within the district. So what are the characteristics of effective school boards? Because that's what we're talking about, right? Effective school boards commit to a vision of high expectations for student achievement, for quality instruction, and make sure that those goals that are developed, they define exactly how we're going to get to that vision. So we're going to be working on that work as a school board. Effective boards also have strong shared beliefs about values, about what is possible for our kids in their ability to learn and in their ability to teach all children at high levels. We have to have this strong belief. Our mindset has to be strong to know all kids are capable, our staff is capable, we can do this work together. And those are effective boards that are focused on that. They're also accountability driven. They spend less time on the operational issues like, how did you solve that? How did you discipline this individual? What program are we using? How are we doing that? Those are all operational issues and questions, right? The board is focused on policies to improve student achievement. And as you heard earlier from Mrs. Miller, there's a lot of work to be done on policies. We're going to be busy for the next 3 months it's going to be a lot. There's going to be a lot of policies that need to be updated. And when you approve these policies, Dr. Sorensen is responsible for implementing them and to make sure that everything that we do is focused on adhering to all of those policies. So your work as a board is to be able to tell Dr. Sorensen, was a policy followed or not? Effective boards also have a collaborative relationship with staff in the community to establish strong communication structure to inform and engage both internal and external stakeholders in setting and achieving district goals. So again, board, you already have this expectation of Dr. Sorensen. And as you heard tonight in public comment, you know that's happening. We heard that same individual here at public comment a couple of board meetings ago talking about how something was, she wasn't happy with some decisions that were made, right? Dr. Sorensen listened and is very collaborative and allowed for that space to talk about it, to think it through. Sometimes, everyone is going to like the decision, sometimes they won't. But she has proven that she's doing that. She's been collaborative with each of you, she's been collaborative with her team, and she's been collaborative with the community. And so that's important. That's what happens with effective boards. And the superintendent is part of that governance team. Effective boards are also data savvy. They embrace and monitor data even when the information is negative, and they use it to drive continuous improvement. You're going to start seeing a shift. We are going to start seeing a shift in board meetings. There's going to be data presentations every single meeting, once a month at least, and we're going to be talking about how students are doing. We're going to be talking about how our special ed students doing in comparison to our regular ed students, right? How are economically disadvantaged students doing compared to our Hispanic? And we've already been told they're about the same, right? They tend to be the same kiddos. But all of you are going to be able to ask those questions and be able to communicate to the community when they ask you, hey, how are things going? You're going to know exactly how things are going. There's going to be times when you're going to say, we had some fourth grade data that came back. It didn't look good. It didn't look good. I'm worried about it, but I know that Dr. Sorensen and her team are regrouping, and they're looking at the data. They're really digging deep to find out what happened, and they're course correcting, just like she did with that compensation guide. We're going to course correct throughout the year, and the team is going to be writing a monitoring calendar that's in line with the assessment calendar, so we can know what months we're going to look at each of those goals and the sub-goals, so that we can be sure that we are on a regular basis looking at the data, monitoring the data, and making sure that it's getting us closer to where we want to be. Effective boards align and sustain resources, such as professional development, to meet district needs. And you guys have seen this with the passing of the new budget. There's been a shift in where the spending is, and you all have had a part in that already to pass this year's budget. Effective boards also lead as a united team with the superintendent, each from their respective roles, but with strong collaboration and mutual trust. Guys, you've had some frank conversations, as it's going to happen. All boards do, right? There's 7 of you that are coming with different backgrounds and different beliefs. So we have to come together and align our beliefs so that we have a La Jolla belief system based on La Jolla values, based on the La Jolla vision that we're going to be working on building together. Effective boards also take part in team development and training, sometimes with our superintendent, to build shared knowledge, values, and commitments for their improvement efforts. I can tell you this board already has surpassed all of the requirements for this year with all the training they've already had. And it was all new. All the board members were new to this, so they've done it together, which has been great. But with Lone Star Governance alone, I believe that they have gained 16 hours of training, which is really incredible. And I want to applaud this team because they all made the commitment to be here for 2 full days. They got here all on time, and they stayed till the end. Super important to be able to get the work done. So now I want to focus on Board work and superintendent work, that's part of our training. You guys know the language, right? But with the community, when we talk about Lone Star governance and staying in our lane, we distinguish very, very clearly between board work and superintendent work. And board members should be doing what kind of work? Obviously, board work, and the superintendent should be doing superintendent work. It sounds easy, right? It's really tough. It's really tough because it's easy to get into another lane. So what's board work? Board work are all those things, all those items that are discussed or acted on during board meetings because they're either required by the state, directly pertain to the board's student outcomes, goals, constraints, and the superintendent or board constraints. So basically, the board does three major things. They hire the superintendent. They're the only ones that can do that. They adopt the policy. There cannot be any policy implemented in this district unless the board adopts it, and they approve the budget. Nobody else can do that. And so their major role as a board, as a body, is to ensure that the policy is being followed in everything that we do. And so when policy is not being followed, then their role is to make sure that they communicate to the superintendent, look, based on this policy, it seems that this decision doesn't fall in line. And that's where the collaboration, the teamwork comes in place, and that communication is vital to that relationship. So what is superintendent work? Everything else. Anything that does not fall into the category of board work is superintendent work. And to put it simple, it's the day-to-day operations of a school district. Anything having to do with staff, superintendent work. Buildings, superintendent work. Academic, superintendent work. Discipline, right? All of these things. Grievances, parent involvement. All of that is superintendent work. And all of you bring different experiences to the board. We definitely want to hear from you, just like you do. Give your comments, give your opinions. But at the end of the day, it's Dr. Sorensen's has to make the decision on what she's going to do. So again, they work together collaboratively to make sure that we have an efficient agenda, and that's come a long way already since we first started in February. As you've noticed, I hope the community has noticed that our meetings are more streamlined. We are putting much more on the consent agenda. Doesn't mean that the board members aren't doing a lot. Trust me, they have probably a packet this big of preparation to do before every board meeting, and they're meeting twice a month. It's a lot. So they're doing a lot of the work behind the scenes. Then they also meet with the superintendent before the meetings in small groups of 3, so as not to have a quorum, just so that the superintendent can explain anything, so that they can ask questions about any of these items. So because you don't see them asking questions now, doesn't mean they don't have the questions, doesn't mean they're not questioning anything, but that's happening outside, and that's intentional. That work needs to happen at another place, another time, not here in this location. Here, we should be focused on getting the job done and focusing on student outcomes. The other thing that an effective board does, and what we're going to do, is by the end of August, September, and October, we will be spending at least 50% of our time focused on student outcomes in our meetings. Meaning if in 2 hours we spent only 30 minutes talking about student outcomes, and we add up the time in a lot of different ways. We're going to be tracking every single minute of every board meeting. It's going to be categorized. We're going to let everybody know the following meeting how many minutes we're focused on student outcomes. They have committed to doing that. So what's the work ahead? Now I'm going to get to what we're doing with LSG. This is for you, board. I wanted to give the community some context. So in September, I'll be working with the superintendent and her team to review the data, to create a needs assessment based on the data, and to also not create the vision, but create components of what we think a vision could be and should be. We're going to give that to you guys, and then we're going to go through an exercise, and with the information that we give you from the team, you as a board will create the vision, a vision for La Joya ISD. And this vision is going to be something that we see in the future for our kids, 5 years from now, because all of our goals that we create are going to be 5-year goals. So we're also going to talk about and craft some student outcome goals to share with you, right? We're also going to craft some superintendent constraints and develop this monitoring calendar that I talked about. And importantly is developing the progress monitoring format. How are we going to share with you the data on a monthly basis so that you can easily understand it and so that the community knows what does this mean? If we keep changing the format like, oh, this looks cool, look at this cool, it's going to confuse everybody. We want it to be clear what exactly we're tracking and are we making progress or not. In September, our work continues with our board workshop. We're going to meet on a Saturday, and we're going to focus intensely on those student outcomes. We're going to review the work and recommendations of the team. We will develop a vision on that day. We will develop goals on that day. We will develop superintendent and board constraints. We're going to discuss any ways that we can streamline the agenda further. We're going to conduct the board's first self-evaluation on that Saturday together, and we will develop a monitoring calendar. This is a lot for that day. That's why Dr. Sorensen is going to be giving you information little by little this month so that you're not, caught at the end with all this information. But a lot of work needs to happen. Then in October, you're going to take action to approve the vision, the goals, constraints, the monitoring calendar, and you're going to approve your own quarterly evaluation for the board, and then we'll do those quarterly so if we're going to have our first one in October, the next one's going to be in January. So our reason for doing that, and that's going to be an open session. When we do this evaluation quarterly, we're going to do it in front of everybody. So you're going to get real used to that process, and it's going to be a way for you to be able to track your progress and so that the community can see what you're working on, where you're focused on, and where you really want to be. In November, we'll meet with the cabinet to further progress monitor student outcomes. We're going to set goal progress measures for each goal, and we might even do that in October. We're going to set constraint progress measures for each of the superintendent constraints, and we're going to begin reporting student outcome data to the Board of Managers. So in November, possibly October, but in November, you will start seeing student data at every board meeting. We will divide up the entire year with all of the goals and goal progress measures. So we will be sharing data with you every time we gather. In November, we continue to progress monitor student outcomes. We continue to implement the monitoring. We're going to adopt board guardrails, right? These are the board constraints. We're going to adopt a superintendent evaluation instrument. We're going to develop board operating procedures manual, and we're going to approve a new policy that essentially codifies your focus on student outcomes. It's going to have our vision, it's going to have our goals, our superintendent constraints and board constraints. We're going to put this in policy, so we're telling our community we're committed to doing this. We're going to be focused on this. And so to build up to that 50% threshold of meeting time, we're going to start with, in November, we're going to say our expectation is we want to have at least 20% of our time spent on student outcomes. We're going to build that. Then in December, we're going to continue all the work, continue monitoring, and continue to implement the tracker, and we'll still be with that 20% at board meetings. In January, we continue the work. It's time for another board evaluation, and still with the 20%, then we move up in February. In February, we're going to expect 30% of a time spent on student outcomes at each board meeting from February to April. Then for the next quarter, May through July, we're going to expect 40% of focus on student outcomes. And then from August to October, we're going to expect that 50% of our time when we gather as a board with our community is going to be spent on student outcomes. There's lots of work that we have to do. I know we're all excited about it and we are up to it. The community can support this process by understanding that the district roles, understanding their district roles, distinct roles, and and by contacting the superintendent's office with any questions or concerns about anything operational that's happening in the district, and supporting the board with the job that they are required to do. It's been such a pleasure to be able to work with La Jolla and the board and the team. We had our first meeting today, and I'm super excited. I feel and I see and I hear, and the work that we're doing is absolutely focused on student outcomes. And we're all committed to change our own behavior to make sure that that happens. Does anybody have any questions?
Members of the board, does anyone have any questions for Diana?
Diana, I want the community to know a little bit more about you and your credentials and why you're such a great coach for us.
Oh, thank you, thank you. I retired about a year and a half ago. I spent 35 years in public education, all working in systems with the demographics of La Jolla. I spent my last 5 years as a superintendent of a small 2A school. During that time, when I was superintendent, we implemented Lone Star governance. I implemented it as a superintendent. And when I went through this training, I thought this was life-changing for me as a leader. And I felt everybody should go through this, right? It shouldn't be, just for school districts that are going through an intervention. Now lots of districts are doing it because they realize and they hear about how awesome it is. But so when I retired, I wanted to do something meaningful. And so I wanted to become a Lone Star governance coach to be able to do this impactful work, to support superintendents, to support school boards, and to have impact on more than one school system. So I work with several school systems as their Lone Star governance coach, but La Jolla is the place where I'm most committed and am most excited to work with. It's been such a journey where we've come and we're just getting started. So thank you for that, Alisa.
Any other board members?
I just want to say thank you, Dr. Barrera, for all you've done, keeping us on track, on focus on what our roles are as a board. So thanks for all you've done.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure. So, board, you'll be seeing me on a monthly basis until we finish with this work. I'll be giving you shorter updates. This one was a little lengthier because I wanted to share with the community what you've learned and what we've talked about and the difference between board work and superintendent work. And that's the hardest thing that we need to work through. So thank you for your time.
Well, I have some things that I'd like to say. First of all, Diana, I agree with Dr. Margot. We're very grateful for everything you've done since day one that we met you. The training that has been provided, you certainly have given us good materials to go back. There are a couple of things that you stated that are very meaningful, I think not only to the board, but to those that are listening. When you focused on students, or you said students are our focus, I want people to remember that. I mean, that's very impactful. You also stated improving student outcomes was a priority to the district, and it is. And it should be for all districts. You had 2 slides. All slides were important, and believe me, I will continue to read them. But the 2 slides that are very impactful for me were slides 46 and 50. And so, if there were 2 slides that I want the public to understand, is what the difference in what are the roles of the board and the roles of the superintendent. You're right. Statutorily, the board has responsibilities, the policy, the hiring of the superintendent and the budget, and everything else to the superintendent. And we have full confidence that our superintendent will continue to lead this great district of ours in La Jolla, and she's done an amazing job since February by identifying great staff,
Absolutely.
by communicating with the folks, our stakeholders. And I'm glad, Diana, that you had an opportunity to join us today. People may ask, why today, right? I'm glad you did, because the people, the public, the folks need to know what our role as a board is and what the role of our leader, our superintendent is. And so we're very grateful that you were able to do not only a great presentation, but to convey that message, not only to those that are here tonight, but those that are listening and paying attention.
And if I could say one more thing, I'd be remiss if I didn't say this. The reason that all of you are here and Dr. Sorensen is because of a state intervention. That's why you're here. That's why everybody is here, right? And the reason we have a state intervention in La Jolla is because we were focused on, or they were focused on adult outcomes. I mean, adult problems, adult issues, right? We've got to make that shift as a community, as a school system, and as a board. You lead that charge, because what happens in the boardroom absolutely trickles down into the classroom. So thank you all for your time and your effort and for your work, and I look forward to the next few months ahead.
Anybody else have anything to add?
I just would add, just so everybody in the audience and the community is aware, is that when we went through Lone Star governance training, it wasn't just myself and the board. We were lucky enough, and I do say lucky, to have 2 really intense days, myself, the board, and the cabinet. And that is a rare opportunity to have a brand new cabinet and a brand new board get to go through that together to really build that team, feeling and concept together around our roles as not just superintendent work, but district work and board work. And so I just really wanted to thank you for allowing us that opportunity. And I also really want the community to know and understand that it is our responsibility as district work, superintendent work, to continue to build that bridge that we heard about earlier this evening, to build trust, transparency, customer service, everything that our district priorities are built around for this year. And so please understand that our district priorities are what drive the superintendent work this year. And so we don't take those lightly. So superintendent work is focused on those district priorities this year.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Deanna. Great work,
you.
and we look forward to hearing from you again, your next report. Have a safe trip back. Next item on the agenda is superintendent's report 5.4. This specific agenda item is stipend remedy. Jamie Miller will be doing, correction, it wasn't going to be the superintendent's report, it's Jamie Miller that will be reporting on this particular agenda item. Again, superintendent stipend remedy. Jamie?
Good evening. It's going to be me this
Good.
tonight. Good evening, Mr. Alvarez, members of the board, Dr. Sorensen. This is Mirjit Crespo, your Chief of Business, Finance, and Administrative Services. We are very happy to update you today for the stipend pay process that we revised due to concerns from our employees. We have carefully reviewed the processes and considered the staff input, and ensuring transparency and prioritizing customer service, we developed and presented a process to the staff, including coaches and principals, and this resulted in a 2-pronged approach. First, the process, and let me move the slide. The process includes a supervisor attestation and employee review of the duties assigned to the stipend pay. This to ensure that we capture all employees and the work to be performed. Second, stipends will be paid similarly to last year's. This means stipends was paid monthly the previous year will be paid monthly this year. And if the stipend was paid annually, then it will remain the same or every semester. We expect to finalize all this process of review and ensuring employees and duties by the end of the month to guarantee the first monthly stipend paid in October. We are very proud because it meant a lot of work for the team to be sure that we process all fast and efficiently to respond to the needs of the staff. Any questions?
Does anyone have any questions for Ms. Crespo?
I have a question just out of curiosity. So you're saying then that the athletics and fine arts went back to getting their stipends paid monthly, yet there were some categories of staff who were getting biannual stipends. Can you give an example of what category of staff got those biannual?
Those were the stipends that originally were done based on staff performing jobs. So like chairs, you have better list. Ms. Miller can.
So for instance, a master stipend, it is paid yearly, and our employees do want that paid at that time because it is a bigger check than being paid monthly. So it's mainly those smaller stipends that are paid yearly, because if we do put that in 11 months, it may be $50 a month instead of having it paid all at one time.
Thank you.
Do we have any further questions? Ms. Crispo, I have a question, and I mean, actually, it's a remark. I appreciate the fact that you've been listening with the folks, and that you brought this back up to our attention. This is really good.
We did it.
You both did. I mean, it was but we appreciate that, because earlier today there was a reference that, that we are listening to our folks, right? We are listening to the public, and we are listening to our stakeholders, so we appreciate that. So thank you. I know this required a lot of work, so we're very grateful to both you and your staff for rolling this out. And again, I think many people are going to be very excited and happy to hear what you just presented today. So thank both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you, President Alvarez, for that. And again, I know they're not here right now, but thank you for the public comment and the coaches that joined. And again, I just want to thank our partners also at AFT and ATPE who also worked with us to provide us input. I do want to add, and this is for public who is listening, is that we are listening. We are listening. And I've said this repeatedly. We may not always agree. And I can probably guarantee that sometimes we are not going to agree. But we are listening. And if you ask, we will show up for the conversation. When the conversations are appropriate, and when the conversations are focused on students, and when the conversations are focused on what's best for the district, and when the conversations are focused on what is best for the employees, and when the conversations are focused on forward for the district, we are happy to engage. All you have to do is let our offices know, and we are happy to engage with our community, our stakeholders, our parents, our students. Our students are part of our stakeholders, and of course our partners. And so there is this myth out there that we won't show up. We'll show up for the conversations when they are focused on what is best for our district and best for our students and best for our district moving forward. And so when we learned of the issue and what it was about, our intention is never to hurt our employees. And so when our employees came forward and said, we just want to talk, we're here to listen. And so I really do want to thank not only my team for having productive dialogue with a group of employees, both on the coaches side and on the fine arts side, but I really do want to thank the coaches who showed up to have really productive conversation, not only about stipends, but there's a whole bunch of other work that they want to get into with us to work on other things for 25-26. And so I thank you for indulging me, President Alvarez, because I really do think it's important that the message gets out to the community that we seek authentic partnership.
Dr. Sorensen, a true example of teamwork, so thank you for that. Does anyone else have anything that they'd like to add? So I know this isn't a specific agenda item, but I see the chief here. And so, Chief, if you could do me a favor of just kind of joining me over here, if you could make yourself to the podium. There has been a concern, and since we have the majority of the folks here with us, I'm glad you're here as well, sir. You know, there's been some talk about the safety of the students and what's happening as a result of some of these unfortunate instances around the country. And if I may, Superintendent Sorensen, if I may ask the chief, and if you could indulge us in what's happening with what we're hearing. You know, I don't do social media, but obviously it's out there that things are happening. There's students that are unsafe, and I can assure you that our students in La Jolla are very safe. But if you don't mind, could we have that dialogue, and can you share with us what's been happening in the last couple of days as a result of social media?
Good evening, Mr. Board President Alvarez, Ms. Dr. Schwartzen, Superintendent of Schools, and the esteemed board members that are here tonight, and the community that's listening today on us. We did do a presentation, and we have a team that works together collaboratively, and I'd like to, Ms. Blanca.
Oh, great.
There's a presentation that we have in place, so we'd like to start with that. Blanca.
So I know that safety has been a concern this week, and there's been a lot of events in our campuses, and I know parents, community members want to know about what's going on and what are our protocols and procedures when things like this happen. And so Emergency Management Coordinator, Mr. David Torres, will be informing about the procedures, and then we'll be talking about how we're communicating this.
Good evening, everybody. My name is David Torres. I'm the Emergency Management Coordinator here for La Jolla ISD. I was asked to speak in relation to the incidents going on, school safety and policy. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and get started. What are some of the things La Jolla ISD is doing? La Jolla ISD utilizes a multi-layered approach by utilizing multiple means to to mitigate, respond, and recover in case of an incident. It allows the district to be well-rounded and prepared for anything that it might encounter. Diving a little deeper into that, mitigation efforts, training, and planning with staff serves as a primary means to prevent incidents from occurring. So with this in mind, whether that training is in relation to safety, whether it's professional development, whether it involves our emergency operation plan, anything of that nature, by training our staff and having protocols in place, it allows them to be ready for any situation they may encounter. And if something were to arise, they're able to respond appropriately to anything that might occur. Additionally, physical measures are also in place to ensure that student and staff safety is always at the paradigm, at the very front of our priority. La Jolla ISD strives to ensure that staff is equipped for any situation that may occur. Moving forward a little bit more with the training, we utilize what is called Standard Response Protocol. SRP is based off the response to any given situation, not an individual scenario. With this in mind, like the incident command structure utilized by FEMA, SRP demands a specific vocabulary, but also allows for great flexibility. So, any situation that may occur, given the use of Standard Response Protocol, it allows us to not only judge the severity of an incident, it also helps us judge the response. So, for example, a hold, a secure, lockdown, shelter in place, or evacuation is going to be standard terminology that you will see across the country. SRP is one of the gold standards that is used across the country in relation to emergency management and in response to any type of situation that may occur. Moving forward, silent panic and alert technologies. In the event an incident does occur, multiple methods are in place to ensure a proper response. For example, the use of Raptor alerts, Blue Point pull stations, 911 call notification systems, and other methods help us to ensure that if help is needed, most importantly, it is accessible by everyone and information is communicated rapidly. As we move forward, student safety is a number one priority for La Jolla ISD. In the event of an incident, multiple methods can be used to respond and ensure that students and staff are safe. If information is received, it is communicated to the appropriate administrative staff at all levels, police department personnel, and if necessary, surrounding law enforcement agencies. A collaborative and investigative effort is then initiated to ensure safety is maintained. With this in mind, I'm going to pass it over to Chief, who will expand a little bit more on that.
Mr. Board President, this is to answer your question. I actually communicated with Dr. Swanson and the cabinet and via telephone, and we were monitoring the events that were happening in the Mid Valley. So we kind of figured we needed to take action for Monday. This happened on Sunday. So we had to make sure that every officer that was in place, and we have personnel patrolling our schools. We hadn't had a single threat at that time, but usually here in the Valley, when something does happen, it just kind of trickles over to other campuses and so forth, or districts. So I didn't make contact before we made a decision with the other police chiefs from the ISDs from the eastern part of Hidalgo County. And of course, we were trying to find some trends that have occurred and so what they were working on. So the next step was to actually engage and make a decision to step up the patrol division in every campus while we were hoping we didn't get a single threat. But mid-morning, we received the threat, and that's when we started assessing the situation, and we had all hands on deck, and that's where we go to the next one. We follow the protocol.
Moving forward, if information is received about a potential incident at a campus, additional PD and administrative staff are mobilized to support the campus. Additionally, extra patrol, collaboration with other agencies, increased presence at the campus, continuous updates to administration on all levels, communication with the public, and expansion of resources, if needed, can be initiated.
And this is where goes the next segment of it all. We mobilized all police department personnel from the office, including patrol, and we provided extra patrol in our affected school campuses that were affected by threats or by false claims and so forth. So at the same time, when we collaborated with the superintendent and the cabinet and keep them abreast of every situation we're doing and what we're experiencing, so we all have that documented. We also continued collaborating with the local ISD police chiefs throughout the past 3 days, and we see we're seeing the same similar situations, and we're taking it by campus by campus was being affected. So at this time, I'm gladly to announce that no incident occurred. All our leads, investigated by our investigators, have not come up with anything. Most of the conversations were based on the allegations that were talked between students and saying, did you hear what happened? And then, of course, more social media, and we got some tips through the anonymous alerts that we followed up on. So far at this time, nothing has occurred. We are continuing to make sure that the safety of our staff and our students is our utmost priority for the district.
Thank you, Chief. So this is really good information, right? So I appreciate that. I just really wanted just to share with the audience and with us, because of what we had been hearing. I know this is an action item and this isn't on the agenda, but I would like a report regularly at our next board meeting. What are we doing? You know, it looks like you guys were already working on something, which is really good, and you guys are always prepared. That's what I love about our school district. We're always prepared for everything, right? And we always play proactive. So I appreciate this data, but I think it'd probably be better suited at our next board meeting. But what I did want to inform our parents and to the public that we were safe and that, you know, we had nothing to worry about. So, but thank you, Chief, for the great work, and please be safe and convey that message to our parents that we're doing everything we can to make sure that, you know, our schools are safe.
And we'll continue to investigate every incident like this. It's
great.
We're not going to take it lightly.
No, I agree. Thank you very much. Mr. Flores, Chief, thank you very much. Or Torres, sorry.
I do want to acknowledge, just because she is right there, is the work of Blanca in the communications department. I mean, without her and her team helping us to communicate constantly to parents and families in the district and to campuses, we would not be able to communicate as clearly as we are with every single stakeholder, as clearly and quickly as we do. And so thank you to Blanca and her team for their work.
Okay. That's fine. Thank you, Chief. Again, I just wanted an update, nothing from the board. I appreciate that. And again, next time we'll go ahead and put this on the agenda. We will probably be asking board members maybe to ask questions of you all. What are we doing? Maybe current updates. But at this time, I just wanted to see and make sure that everybody knew that we were doing really a good job to protect our students.
Thank you, Mr. President.
All right. Thank you both for your time and for all you do. Next item on the agenda is consent agenda item number 6. Do I have a motion?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Do I have a second?
I second the motion.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Okay, next agenda is going to be closed session. That is agenda item number 7. To be held for purposes authorized by the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code Section 551.001, 551.071, as I mentioned, 551.0, correction, 551.129, 551.074, 551.072, 551.076, and 551.0821 concerning any and all purposes permitted by the Act, including but not limited to the sections and purposes listed below. With that said, it is 7:34 p.m. We are now in closed session. We are back from closed session, and it is 9:40 p.m. Agenda item number 9 is to take action and discussion. Consider action regarding Level 3 DGBA grievance filed by Maria Guerra. Do I have a motion?
I move that we have stopped, looked, and listened, and we take no further actions on this item.
Do I have a second?
I second the motion.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Next item is action and discussion. 9.2 regarding Level 3 DGBA grievance filed by Eduardo Galaviz. Do I have a motion?
I move that we have stopped, looked, and listened, and take no further action on this item.
Do I have a second?
Second the motion.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. The following is item 9.3, consider and take action to approve the termination of employees on term contracts. Do I have a motion?
I move to approve this item number 9.3.
Do I have a second?
I second the motion.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Following item is 9.4, consider and take action regarding the superintendent's recommendation for the proposed termination of Chapter 21 term contracts employees. Do I have a motion?
I move to approve item 9.4.
Do I have a second?
I second the motion.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Agenda item number 10 is our calendar. September 25th, 2024, regular board meeting. October 9th, 2024, regular board meeting. October 11th, 2024, school holiday, no classes. October 14th, 2024, bad weather day, no classes. October 16th, 2024, special called board meeting, student recognitions. October 23rd, 2024, regular board meeting. At this time, we have agenda item number 11. Dr. Sorensen, do you have any remarks before we adjourn?
I just want to bring everyone's attention to September being Attendance Awareness Month. And so there's lots of awareness during September. It's also suicide awareness and cancer awareness, which are all very near and dear to all of our hearts. I also really want to lift up that it is incredibly important that students are here every single day. And so I want to lean into Attendance Awareness Month. If students aren't here every single day, we cannot lift up educational excellence in the way that we want to. There's a lot of national data, a lot of local data around the connection between attendance and academic achievement. And so if we could partner with our schools and partner with our parents to really work together to make sure that our students are here every single day. And if there's anything that we can do as a school district to help, we are here to do that, but just really want to lean into the importance of student attendance every single day, not only this month, but every month.
Thank you, Dr. Sorensen. Do any of the board members have any closing remarks before we adjourn? Seeing that we do not have any, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn this meeting at 9:44 p.m.
Do I have a second?
I second the motion.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned.